Thank you, Christine. And thank Balcony for inviting me to this auspicious event. I asked Christine how much time I had. She said, well, about 5 minutes. And I said, well, I had a joke that lasts 5 minutes. So I have a choice of either telling you what the task force has been up to or telling the joke. And I'll do the joke. No. I'll have to go quite quickly. The last winter, in the face of the severe economic crisis that all of us are aware of, and the severe budget problems that the state has had, the Governor Patterson, with I think a good deal of foresight, said if we're going to get out of this mess, it has to be led by the great generator of jobs in our state, the 500,000 plus small businesses with less than 100 employees, because they are going to lead us out of this severe recession and bring back our economy. So we have to find ways for the state to do what it can do, and obviously the state does not act alone, to help small businesses, and that has to be a major part of this administration's agenda. And as a result, he created a small business project team in his administration, and this team then had a series of focus groups, 8 focus groups throughout regions of the state, in which they brought together small businesses and government and bankers and so forth to talk about the issues and to express their opinions as to what the state should be doing to help small business. And of course, as many of you small business people know, a big part of this issue is changing the climate of business, of how the state deals with business in New York. That could you ask those people to be a little quieter, Lou? I have, you know. So anyway, there's a reputation this state has, for some good reason, I think, for being unfriendly to small business and business generally. High tax state, obviously. But more than that, the regulatory process often difficult and unnecessarily so. But the governor's position was, we have to turn this around. As a result of these focus groups, in July, he created the Small Business Task Force. And the Small Business Task Force is composed of about 60 members, with about 35 from the private sector, representatives from majority and minority, a Senate and Assembly in the state, state and federal officials, the regional director of SBA, who is here today, is on the task force, and other state government officials, and bankers are also financial people. And he charged the task force with coming up with recommendations that were doable, and I emphasize doable, for state initiation, with 2 very serious caveats. One, we can't do anything about taxes. We are strapped in the state, and we can't seriously consider tax reductions, which is always a big issue for small business in this state. And secondly, we can't add expenses to our budget. In other words, anything you recommend cannot impact. I can't go back to the legislature when we're asking for cuts totaling $4 billion this year and probably 10 or 12 billion next year and say we want to add money for this or that. It's just not on the table. Well, that makes the charge of the task force somewhat problematic. But it was at least gave us a reality check in terms of recommendations and strategies. The task force, I said, was 60 persons. It met at first in July. We divided up into committees to make it workable, 4 committees, and those committees each came up. There was a list of possible initiatives that could be undertaken, and each committee came up with 5 to 10 recommendations that they thought were feasible, and then the committees voted on priorities. And out of that process, we fashioned our recommendations, which yesterday, and this is the working draft in case I forget anything, yesterday the task force met in Albany and in effect gave its imprimatur on the draft recommendations to move forward and give the governor its recommendations by the end of this month. So on November 30th, we expect to present the recommendations to the governor from the task force, and then the indications are that he will take the ones that he thinks are doable or significant and include them in his State of the State address in January. These have been kind of vetted with the state's Department of Budget, so we know that that's not going to be a big issue. And I think, despite the restraints, that we have put together a significant set of priorities for the state to proceed. Again, the time is so short, I'm not going to go through them all. They're still in draft, but there are about, I think, 20 to 22 recommendations, depending on how you count. And I'll just go through the kind of globally some of them that might be of particular interest to you. First group of recommendations had to do with increasing access to capital to spur business development. And the task force recommended a couple of things, like a new major small business loan fund with different categories, under 25 micro lending, 25 to 250,000 for regular small business lending, and over 250,000 for major growth initiatives. Second important initiative was the creation of a seed capital fund to spur new initiatives, to deal with what's often known as the valley of death between when an entrepreneur creates something and the ability to actually get it launched and get it underway. And that is in conjunction with creating incubator space at a number of our college campuses so that these businesses have an opportunity to thrive and to grow.